Naqash and Amir. I am absolutely so delighted to have you all on filmyshow.me.com and a huge congratulations on In Camera, which will be premiering at the BFI London Film Festival.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have to say, this really was a dark but very relatable satire on the show business situation in Britain. And I think not just as a journalist, which I've kind of seen, actors go through what they've gone through, but, as journalists as well, we've kind of gone through a similar sort of a pattern as well of rejection and waiting. So Nakash, where did this idea come from, and what were some of the influences that really helped you to tell it in a very cinematic manner?
Yeah, I think you hit it right there. It's not, it can be about anybody. It's about anybody navigating a system. And I think a lot of the systems we navigate, whether they are journalism or acting, are quite violent systems. So I really wanted to set a fairy tale about somebody navigating these kinds of systems.
Right. And I think Yeah, I think what I also really liked was the way you use your camera to showcase Circle of Life, whether that's through dialogues or even with one of the characters, getting into a washing machine, to symbolize the cycle and to symbolize the circle of how, it just continues, even representing the system, like you mentioned as well. Again, I would love to know some of your influences of cinema. What really inspired you to show these very hard-hitting messaging, but in a very abstract way.
Yeah, my influences are kind of everything I've seen from childhood to now. Like, I was thinking a lot about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but I was also thinking about Clue, the film from 1971 with Jane Fonda. Um, and I love Olivier Assayas's films, Lynn Ramsey. I could go on. But European cinema is always a big reference for me.
hmm And I think what's also very special, Nabhaan, you had a film called Mogul Mowgli, which also premiered at BFI as well, which was an exceptional film. Um, Again, if we look about that, again, it really delves into one's psychological, uh, I guess, trauma, I guess, thoughts, memories in such a dark way. And yet again, you kind of explore the sense of darkness, but there's also this internal pain that you manage to hold as an actor. I would love to know what were some of your reference points besides the script and besides Nakash's guidance as a director that really helped you to maintain and balance all of those.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I had to go against a lot of my instincts with this one. It's it's a highly internal performance. And so every instinct I had to, um, I guess, come out of it, I couldn't. And I knew that I had to just trust Nakash's guidance with that. And yeah, portray a kind of masculinity which is quite atypical in like Western lead performances. So I was aware of that, and yeah, we studied a lot of references when it came to certain performances. But just to go back to like the cyclical nature of the story, like we had a lot of influences that were outside of cinema as well. Fine art being one. Artists like Rashid Araeen, Anwar Khalifi, people who show a lot of like patterns and repetition um, in their work. Yeah.
And again, I also find it very fascinating when one does depict darkness because I feel like, like I mentioned as well in my question about how there is that sense of darkness in his mind where obviously it must come from a personal space. Did you ever have to tap into something which maybe you've experienced in your life, which perhaps might be close to, I mean, I'm sure you must have faced rejection at some point being an actor, but was there anything else besides that which really helped you to bring out those raw emotions too?
I think there's just a notion in society that one has to like morph into someone else, or like you as you are is not applicable or not suitable in order to succeed through a system. So you have to to modify yourself and modulate yourself to a standard, and that in itself is quite dark. So I guess just being aware of that, and then just being doubly aware that within acting, this notion is amplified because people think acting is becoming something else. So what if you take someone who takes that very literally? So that's the darkness of it. But I also have to lean in and say, like, this film is poking fun as well. You know, it's as fun as it is dark, and you can have a laugh watching it despite.
Yeah. I mean, there's this one scene which actually really made me laugh because it's so I've seen such comments where you're playing basically a terrorist in the one sequence, and the I think the director is basically saying, "Oh, can you add an accent, a Middle Eastern accent?" And you're just like saying, "What? Like, what do you mean accent?" Like every time he goes, "Yeah, it makes it sound authentic." Like it's so funny how it addresses so many stereotypes that the West have when they cast Eastern actors, South Asian actors as well. And I think that was so interesting the way you sort of subtly addressed that. But Naqqash, I would like to know your perspective. And I will come to you. I'm so sorry. I will definitely come to you in a bit. um, for you, when you are addressing these subjects, because again, we're talking about mental health here, we're talking about a very bogged down system. You're talking about stereotypes, cultural stereotypes here. How did you manage to weave it into such a poetic way? Because I think it's so difficult to do that for filmmakers because usually they make such big statements to sound woke and to sound relevant.
Yeah, I actually wanted to make a comedy about exactly what you just said, and not make something that was too didactic, and something that was fun. And I think tragedy and comedy, they kind of come from the same place. I'm very detail oriented as a writer and as a director. So to me, like Nabhaan said earlier, we were looking at a lot of artworks that had patterns that would repeat, tessellations. So the script also had in its construction lots of like looping, lots of repeating. I think one thing that's really core in the film is it's about presenting one thing and then kind of flipping it on its head and consistently, whether that is a character or production design or a theme or an idea. It was all about how very clearly presenting it and how we would flip it. And then when you're working with incredible artists like these guys and across the board, it's really easy once you've tuned into the same frequency to do that together. Because filmmaking is all about collaboration. It's not like writing a novel. You're kind of always building something with somebody else. These guys, so it's quite easy to arrive at that because they completely understood what it is I wanted to do. And we had a period of rehearsal that was really interesting and exciting.
And Amir, I would love to talk about your character as well, because I think even though there's no particular heroes or villains, set up here, it's interesting how you're actually not an antagonist at all. It's just that you're someone who is out for themselves, who prioritizes themselves over their friend, but yet, the behavior that he adapts is very patronizing. He kind of feels like he's in control of things, which I'm pretty sure is quite different to how you are. I would like to hope so, at least. So again, when it comes to playing a character like this, which is quite completely, different to how you are, if at all, what helped you to really use as a reference point? Like how Nabhaan, I had asked him about his darkness. What helped you to really adapt this very, high almighty approach that he sort of had?
I think the first thing with any character should always be vouching for them and championing them. You never like read something and go, "Oh, this guy's the bad guy in this." You have to completely understand their motivation and also the projections that they've made as well growing up, and why are they maybe being defensive or reactive to what Nabhaan's character is doing, Aden. So I don't really necessarily see him as somebody who is I think I'm someone who's evil or bad, since I think he's just a product of the same trials and tribulations that Aden has come through and gone through, and it just so happens that the system or the society that surrounds them makes them think that they are up against each other when they're not. that only one person can occupy that space. But yeah, in terms of rehearsals were very cyclical in nature, like the film. We would probably do one scene over and over and over again in several different ways. One of the lovely things about working with both Cash and Nabhaan is that no take was the same. We would offer up and react to different things that the other person would give. I think obviously Nabhaan had the harder task of the note. The general note was, I guess, for the most part, was not giving too much and seeing how that can evolve in the scene. But yeah, we felt it was such a playful process, even though it was quite sinister in moments. It was such a playful experience, very freeing actually to be on that set and to not really care about what shot or where we're going to be doing. Is it a two shot or is it a wide or is it? We're kind of ready for anything.
Yeah, Naqqash looked after that. We just offered up and got to play. It's important to say also we worked with a really great movie director in rehearsals, Theo Parks. Is his name? Yeah, we'll get his name too, but I think it's Theo Parks. He was amazing and kind of developing Aden's physicality at kind of polar opposites. With Axie's physicality and how, in terms of like having to study Amir and study his physicality, trying to adopt it, he helped with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the camera shots are beautiful. I mean, I think I did notice a lot of close-ups as well. I mean, especially when it came to depicting Aden as well. Like I noticed that as well, just to make it really, just to show how the world is almost closing in on him, but yet also it shows him and allows him to have the thoughts and express himself, which I thought was very clever. But I think wanted to ask both of you actually, and Amir, I'm going to go with you first, is about the sort of level of popularity, and I think the growth you've all had as artists, I think is magnificent. Um, it's wonderful how you've all attained this sense of breakthrough, may I say so, and that's continuing as well. So when you're playing a character like this, which obviously looks back at perhaps a time when you were also beginning, how has success or fame impacted the way you perhaps look at these two characters you played, but from a very neutral perspective?
Such an interesting question. So it's such a hard question to answer because I don't really think in that way of like there are pillars I have to cross in order to feel successful. I think like the same way the other projects have come to me and I've met with directors. I think you fall in love with the vision of the director and the writing, and then you see what you can offer in that piece of you could be of use. I think it's a very dangerous path to look at a project and go, what can this do for me, rather than what can I offer as a person to that piece. And the byproduct is the success or the fruits of that labor coming in, people enjoying it, and then obviously we all like praise, we all like getting lauded for for our performances and stuff. But I think when you focus on the work and you with as much integrity as possible, everything else falls into place.
Right. Nabhaan, would you like to add anything to that?
I have to go after that. Man
Yeah.
said, yeah, totally. To echo Amir's sentiment, I really just think I'm here to just play, and work with my friends and experiment, and everyone else can decide everything else, what that means.
We already go through so many things anyway, as non-white acts. How do I put this? Like there are so many other things, trials and tribulations that are not in our hand. And I think when you get offered something like this that can champion us as performers, then we have to really serve the piece.
That's a really interesting point, actually. And I think, what I would really love to talk about is again, South Asian ethnic representation, generally. I mean, Nabhan, I think it would be very nice to get your perspective as well, because I feel like it's great that the floodgates have really opened, and I'm seeing a lot more South Asian rep in Western cinema, whether it's in Hollywood, Britain, or even abroad as well. But what do you think is still like in the need of the hour to improve? Because I often feel like, especially when I do interviews with actors who are sort of working, who are South Asian and who are working in the West, it almost seems like getting like an ethnic actor is more of a tick boxing criteria, you know, satisfying thing rather than actually offering them a role which is substantial. Like for example, with what you guys have had in this movie. So what do you think can be done to improve that side of things?
I don't know. I'm not on that particular spokesperson. I'm not on that particular jury, but I would say everything is a contentious topic, and everything we have to say on the topic went into this film. And with that being said, I think we can have no regrets. And yeah, I think that's what we want to lean into, just to say that.
Mhm. And Nakash, what about you as a filmmaker? I mean, because obviously when you are making a film, you're pretty much in that position where you can perhaps tell a story the way you want to tell it rather than someone dictating necessarily to you. I mean, of course, you have the producers and distributors, and that's, I'm sure, a different ball game altogether. But, again, for you, how important is it for you to actually tell those authentic stories of like minorities and ethnic people too?
I'm personally just interested in making the most emotionally truthful film and saying what I want to say, um, and leaning into that. I think it's really your responsibility as an artist to represent your preoccupations and your dreams and the things that you're concerned with from your very specific point of view to the rest of the world. And I think that's how we all connect as artists with the collaborators we have, but also with audiences. So I think
Hmm.
it's important to not feel like you have this added burden of leaning into anything that other people want you to. People have an idea of who you are and who you could be, and I think it's really important for you to make the film that you want to make, and not the film that people like to make. I'm really supported on this film. Um, yeah.
Hmm. Amir, would you like to add anything?
Uh, it's a difficult one. I do feel like for a very long time we have been singing a particular song, and now that song is changing ever so slightly. But it's down to heads of departments to have that representation there, and then that will trickle down.
Hmm. I think on a final note, I'm going forward after this amazing premiere at the BFI. What would you like, number one, audiences to take away from in camera? And number two, what do you hope the reach will necessarily have? What would you expect from this premiere too? Nakash?
I don't have like a neat answer for this. I honestly think this kind of film is laced in ambiguity, and it's a little bit like a game, like a puzzle. So I really want people to take away their own interpretation away from it. And I'm personally really excited to engage with people and see what their interpretation of this film is, because it's not one of those films that is very clearly of a simple plot. There's so much in there that I've put that I want people to interpret. So I'm really interested in everyone's unique individual responses, to be honest.
All right. Well, I'm sure it's going to be very interesting to read the reviews, I think, once the premiere is done. But look, thank you so much, Nakash, Nabhan, and Amir. It's been so wonderful to have you on filmishnalme.com. And yeah, congratulations. It's such a good film. Really, I was engaged. Literally, it's one of those films where sometimes you watch a movie and you end up kind of getting distracted. But this one I could not put down. So it was really great. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you. All right. Bye bye.